So glad you're streaming with us. Well, low water levels at the Panama Canal are actually causing a traffic jam in one of the largest trading routes in the world right now.
Panama is fast becoming a top travel destination in Central America, with the Panama Canal as its main attraction. While many visit to see this engineering marvel, its real importance lies in global trade. Recently, Elon Musk surprised everyone by saying the canal is close to collapsing. Though it may seem unlikely, the canal has been facing serious issues for some time. Is this the beginning of the end, or will something unexpected turn things around? In this video, we'll explore the challenges the canal is dealing with and what's behind them: the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is an incredible man-made waterway that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, cutting through the narrow landmass of Panama. This engineering marvel stretches about 40 miles from shore to shore and approximately 50 miles from deep waters in the Caribbean Sea to deep waters in the Pacific. Before it was built, ships had to take a much longer and more dangerous route around the southern tip of South America, navigating the rough waters of Cape Horn. By passing through the Panama Canal, ships traveling between the east and west coasts of the United States can save around 8,000 nautical miles, while those moving between North America and South America's opposite coast cut their journey by about 3,500 nautical miles. The canal also shortens travel distances by up to 2,000 nautical miles for ships heading between Europe and East Asia or Australia. The Panama Canal officially opened in August 1914, becoming one of the world's most important waterways alongside the Suez Canal. Initially, the United States controlled the canal since they were responsible for its construction. However, in 1979, control was transferred to the Panama Canal Commission, a joint agency of the U.S. and Panama. Finally, on December 31, 1999, Panama gained full control of the canal, marking a historic shift in its operation. The Panama Canal operates using a system of locks, which function like massive water elevators, raising and lowering ships to match the different water levels between the two oceans. These locks are powered by gravity, with water flowing in from nearby lakes such as Gatun Lake, Alajuela Lake, and Miraflores Lake to fill or drain the lock chambers. Each lock is built to a standard size, allowing ships to pass in both directions at the same time. The lock gates are enormous, consisting of two panels, each 65 feet wide and 6.5 feet thick. Depending on their location, these gates stand between 46 and 82 feet tall. They are moved by electric motors embedded in the lock walls. A control tower positioned between the paired locks manages the opening and closing of these massive gates, as well as the filling and draining of the chambers. Each lock chamber measures 1,000 feet long, 110 feet wide, and 40 feet deep. While smaller ships can pass through the locks without help, larger vessels require special electric towing locomotives, which run on tracks along the lock walls. These locomotives ensure that ships stay perfectly aligned as they move through the canal. Before a ship enters a lock, it must pass through a fender chain, a safety barrier stretched across the approach. If a vessel's moving too fast, the chain remains taut, forcing the ship to stop to prevent accidents. Additionally, each lock chamber has two sets of gates, spaced 50 feet apart. If a ship were to break free from its towing locomotive and crash into the first gate, the second gate would act as a backup to prevent a major disaster. The third set of locks project, launched in 2007, was inspired by Belgium's Baron Dray Lock and the water-saving basins in Germany. This massive construction effort required around 190,000 tons of steel, most of which came from Mexico, to strengthen the concrete chambers on both the Atlantic and Pacific sides of the canal. The new lock gates are much larger than the original ones, measuring up to 33 feet wide, 98 feet tall, and 190 feet long. A major breakthrough in this expansion was the introduction of water-saving basins, which were completed in 2016. These basins allow the canal to reuse 60% of its water, making operations more efficient. While the older locks required 52 million gallons of water per use, the new system only uses 48 million gallons. But with technology improving, could the canal's current problems be solved? Let's find out. Panama Canal, water crisis. Despite these technological advancements, the Panama Canal is now facing one of its most severe crises. A prolonged drought, worsened by climate change, has caused water levels in the canal to drop significantly, about 6 feet below normal. This is a major issue because the canal relies on fresh water from nearby lakes to operate its locks. During the dry season, an eerie sight emerges. Tree stumps from a long submerged forest reappear, serving as a stark reminder of the environmental challenges the canal faces. To deal with the lower water levels, the Panama Canal Authority has had to enforce the strictest passage restrictions since 1989, when the canal was temporarily closed due to the U.S. invasion of Panama. The daily number of vessels allowed to pass has been reduced to 24, down from the usual 38, causing major delays and economic concerns. Although rainfall in November brought some temporary relief, experts warn that the situation will worsen as the dry season intensifies. This crisis isn't just a problem for Panama. It's part of a larger pattern of climate-related disruptions to global trade. Droughts are also affecting the Mississippi River in the U.S. and the Rhine River in Europe, while rising sea levels threaten coastal areas like the Thames River in the U.K. Meanwhile, melting Arctic ice is creating new shipping routes, reshaping the future of global trade. The Panama Canal plays a crucial role in international commerce, handling around 3% of the world's maritime trade and nearly half of the container traffic between Northeast Asia and the U.S. In 2022 alone, it generated $4.3 billion in revenue for Panama. However, with reduced capacity due to the water crisis, authorities are scrambling to find solutions. One temporary fix has been releasing additional water from Alajuela Lake, a secondary reservoir, to keep canal operations running. But this is only a short-term measure. A more permanent solution being considered is an ambitious $1.6 billion project that would involve damming the Indio River and digging a tunnel through a mountain to transport fresh water 5 miles into Gatun Lake, the canal's primary reservoir. This plan could allow 11 to 15 more ships to pass daily, but it faces strong opposition from local farmers and communities whose land would be flooded to create the new reservoir. Another experimental approach is cloud seeding, where planes spray tiny salt particles into clouds to encourage rainfall. In November, a plane from North Dakota's Weather Modification Inc. arrived in Panama to test this method. However, cloud seeding has had limited success in tropical regions, and it remains uncertain whether it will be effective in Panama. As the crisis deepens, the Panama Canal struggles serve as a warning about the growing impact of climate change on critical global trade routes. With the world's reliance on this vital waterway, finding a long-term solution is more urgent than ever. The Panama Canal present challenge. The Panama Canal is facing a growing crisis, made even worse by the increasing size of cargo ships. These massive vessels require more water to pass through the locks. But when the new, larger locks were completed in 2016, no new reservoirs were built to supply the extra water needed. This oversight has become a major issue, especially with the severe drought of 2023. Water levels in Lake Gatun, the canal's main source, have hit record lows due to a combination of El Niño and rising temperatures, which cause water to evaporate faster than usual. Gabriel Ellerman, head of the Panama Canal Pilots Association, explained that 2023 has been an especially difficult year. Weak trade winds and a lack of rain have only made things worse, further complicating canal operations. As a result, many shipping companies are now looking for alternative routes such as the Suez Canal, the Cape of Good Hope, and the Strait of Malacca. While the Suez Canal has its own challenges, including geopolitical tensions, it is still proving to be a more reliable option than the struggling Panama Canal. Ironically, the Panama Canal was originally built to provide an easier and faster alternative to these long and risky routes. But now, its water shortages are forcing shippers to reconsider their options. Luis Quijano, former head of the Panama Canal Authority, has voiced serious concerns about the canal's long-term future. Although the new locks are remarkable feats of engineering, they consume enormous amounts of water. Every time a single vessel passes through, it uses enough water to fill 76 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Engineers attempted to address this issue by building giant basins to capture and reuse some of the water, but this is only a temporary fix. A new reservoir is desperately needed to ensure the canal's sustainability. Unfortunately, efforts to secure funding for additional water infrastructure have failed, leaving the canal's future uncertain. Beyond the impact on global trade, the water crisis is hitting local communities hard. Rael Luna, a longtime resident living on the shores of Lake Gatun, has watched the water levels drop drastically over the years. Her once thriving business, which relied on the lake's steady water supply, is now struggling. Where boats used to be tied to palm trees at the water's edge, they now sit abandoned 20 feet from the shoreline. The lack of water isn't just an economic problem, It's changing the lives of those who depend on the canal for their livelihoods. With this environmental crisis causing widespread concern, could Panama face a difficult future? Let's take a closer look. Future of the Panama Canal. The U.S. President Donald Trump's comments about the Panama Canal's strategic importance and its potential weaknesses have reignited debates about its future. The canal plays a crucial role in global trade, but growing challenges, ranging from environmental threats to international politics, have put its long-term survival in question. Without quick and effective action, this vital trade route could face serious disruptions. For over a century, the Panama Canal has been a game-changer for global shipping, providing a faster, more affordable, and safer way to move goods between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. In the early 1920s, the canal saw around 5,000 ships pass through each year. Today, that number has more than doubled to over 12,000. However, modern challenges, including climate change and geopolitical tensions, are raising concerns about its stability. During his inaugural speech, Trump claimed that the canal had been carelessly handed over to Panama and accused the country of treating the United States unfairly. He even suggested that China was running the canal, though he offered no concrete evidence. His statement, "We're reclaiming it," hinted at possible U.S. intervention, adding to the uncertainty surrounding the canal's future. To fully understand the canal's importance, we need to look at its history. Throughout the 20th century, the United States controlled the Panama Canal Zone, but tensions with Panama grew over time. The stark contrast between life in the American-controlled zone and the rest of Panama fueled resentment, eventually leading to violent protests in 1964, where both Panamanians and U.S. Marines lost their lives. This unrest pushed U.S. leaders to rethink their approach. And when President Jimmy Carter took office in 1977, he prioritized repairing relations with Latin America. Carter negotiated a historic agreement with Panama that outlined a gradual transition of control. Under this deal, both nations jointly managed the canal until 1999, when Panama took full control. The agreement also included a permanent neutrality treaty, ensuring that the canal would remain open and operate efficiently under fair and reasonable toll policies in line with international law. Today, the Panama Canal stands at a crossroads. It must navigate the challenges of climate change, increasing global shipping demands, and shifting political landscapes. Will it continue to be a lifeline for world trade, or will rising threats weaken its position? Let's explore further. Panama Canal drought impact. The Panama Canal is one of the most important waterways in the world, playing a key role in global trade. To ensure its smooth operation, Panama created the Panama Canal Authority, AACP, an independent organization responsible for managing, upgrading, and setting fees for ships passing through the canal. Since taking full control of the canal, Panama has spent over $5 billion on expansion projects, allowing it to accommodate much larger vessels. Today, the Panama Canal handles around 5% of global maritime trade, making it a crucial passageway, especially for the United States. In fact, nearly 40% of all U.S. container traffic relies on the canal, carrying goods worth approximately $270 billion every year. Under normal conditions, it provides the fastest trade route between the U.S. East Coast and Asia, for example, between New York and Shanghai. It also facilitates European trade to the U.S. West Coast and allows South and Central America to export goods to Asia, such as Brazilian shipments to China. Remarkably, over 74% of all cargo moving through the Panama Canal is either heading to or coming from the United States. However, from 2023 to 2024, the canal faced a serious challenge, a prolonged drought caused by El Niño. Water levels in the canal's primary reservoir, Gotten Lake, dropped significantly, disrupting normal operations. Lower water levels meant fewer ships could pass through, and those that did had to carry less cargo to avoid running aground. This created a classic supply and demand issue. Fewer available shipping slots led to higher transportation costs. To manage the crisis, the Panama Canal Authority introduced a freshwater conservation fee, which increased during dry periods to encourage careful water usage. But despite these efforts, delays became unavoidable. At the peak of the crisis in summer 2023, wait times stretched up to 21 days. These disruptions had financial consequences, with shipping costs rising sharply. The canal has traditionally been a key route for energy shipments, especially for crude oil, refined fuels, and LNG moving from the US, Brazil, and Canada to Asia. This is especially important for LNG, as almost all U.S. LNG export facilities are located on the east and Gulf coasts, making the canal the shortest path to Asia. Likewise, the U.S. Gulf Coast accounts for 40% of the world's LPG exports, most of which are sent to Asian markets. But as the canal's reliability decreased, energy shipments started shifting to alternative routes. By 2024, imports of crude oil, fuel, and LNG to Asia via the Panama Canal had fallen by 6% compared to the previous 2 years. At the same time, energy exporters found new pathways, with shipments via South Africa's Cape of Good Hope skyrocketing by 472%. This shift has made U.S. energy more expensive and less environmentally friendly, as alternative routes take longer and require more fuel. The canal's limitations are now more than just a trade issue. They have become a major political concern. In recent years, the U.S. has used energy exports as a strategic tool in foreign policy, particularly in Asia. But with Panama's canal capacity shrinking, the ability to leverage LNG sales to China, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan has been severely weakened. Monthly shipments via the canal to these countries dropped by 82%. Trump's criticism of the Panama Canal. Donald Trump's criticism of the Panama Canal treaties isn't something new. It didn't just emerge in 2003 when the Miss Universe contest, an event he owned, was held in Panama City. That was simply the first time he personally encountered the country. Even then, Trump was vocal about his belief that the United States had been treated unfairly by the agreements governing the canal. His involvement with Panama deepened in 2018, but this time it wasn't about politics. It was business. A heated legal dispute erupted between the Trump Organization and a hotel investor based in Miami who wanted to cut ties with Trump's brand. The conflict escalated into a tense standoff with Panamanian authorities, ultimately resulting in Trump's name being stripped from the luxury hotel in Panama City at the heart of the controversy. As for Trump's claims that U.S. ships are being overcharged and treated unfairly when passing through the canal, there's no clear evidence to support this. The Panama Canal Authority, which oversees the waterway, follows a structured pricing system that takes into account factors like ship size, cargo type, and how vessels are loaded or unloaded. These fees aren't arbitrary or biased. They apply equally to all ships, no matter what country they come from. In recent years, natural challenges, such as lower water levels, have made it harder for the canal to accommodate vessels as efficiently as before. As a result, the pricing structure has shifted in response to supply and demand. The Panama Canal Authority has a public maritime services calculator available for anyone to use. The 1977 Torrijos-Carter Treaty gives special treatment to ships from neighboring Costa Rica and Colombia, but this mainly applies to military vessels and auxiliary ships, treating them the same as Panamanian ships. This policy is mostly symbolic and doesn't affect commercial shipping. Latin American countries are looking to invest in infrastructure, including ports, and Chinese companies are quickly stepping in to take advantage of these opportunities. However, despite some claims, China doesn't control the Panama Canal. There are 5 ports near the canal, with Hong Kong's Hutchison Port Holdings running 2 of them, one on the Caribbean side and one on the Pacific side. Other ports are managed by U.S., Singaporean, and Taiwanese companies. Hutchison has been running its ports since 1997, when the U.S. still helped manage the canal. In 2012, China Harbor Engineering built a cruise terminal, and it is currently constructing a new bridge over the canal. There are concerns about Chinese companies taking control of key ports. Some fear that Beijing could secretly use these ports to position military assets in a future crisis or block Western ships, like those from the U.S. Another worry is that these Chinese-controlled ports could gather valuable data about shipments, especially those coming from the U.S. Even ports that don't belong to China might be at risk if they use Chinese equipment for scanning or moving goods, allowing China to monitor cargo. Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino, responded firmly to former President Trump's comment about reclaiming the canal, stating that it will always belong to Panama. This came after similar statements and even led Panama to raise the issue at the United Nations, highlighting the U.S.'s threats of using force, which would violate the UN Charter. What do you think about Elon Musk's shocking revelation on the Panama Canal? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe.